attention. Now we are having our last speaker, Ms. Dalia Ziada. She's a civil rights activist and director of Ibn Khaldun Center for Democratic Studies. Please take the floor.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm always happy to be the last speaker because they say the last word always stays with the people. So I'm happy to be here with all of you here in Geneva. My name is Dalia Ziada, as my dear colleague here mentioned, and I lead one of the oldest and biggest think tanks in Egypt that has been working on studying democratization, not only in Egypt, but in the Arab world since 1980s. So I will give you a quick review of what exactly happened during this era and what is stopping us now from achieving the democracy and human rights, which I call it liberal democracy, or academics actually call it liberal democracy, which does not only mean voting, but also the process that brings to the people real human rights and civil rights. I'm also one of the people who were once labeled as revolutionists. I participated in January 25th revolution because I believed there were so much corruption and we had to revolt against it. And at that time, because we were not so much experts in politics, we agreed to include everyone among us as revolutionists, including the Muslim Brotherhood, whom I stand against right now, and I believe most of the people here in the room and most of the people in my country are standing against right now. We agreed because we believed that they are part of this country. They share the same values. They love the country as much as we love it. But soon after that, just a few months later, we found out that they were only running after their own political greediness. They were looking for only having seats in parliament, controlling the country. It's okay, political ambition is very accepted, but marginalizing everyone else, including the youth who were there with them, is what is not really accepted. What we are here for today, as my colleagues here mentioned, is the UPR. And this explains very much why the people who once were together in January 25th revolution decided to make the June 30th revolution 2 years later, especially after the Muslim Brotherhood came to power. Once they came to power, and we agree this is a political ambition and it's accepted, they were organized, they won in elections, but they did not achieve the liberal democracy we were looking for. They achieved the illiberal democracy, which means, okay, you have access to voting polls, go and vote. And then afterwards, I will take away all your rights, simply because I am the one in power. This happened to me as someone who believes very much in women's rights and fights for it. And actually, this was my first shock when I found women leaders from the Muslim Brotherhood who came out claiming that they are representing women and fighting for women's rights, and they were pressuring for laws to legalize FGM, female genital mutilation. They were trying to impose laws to get girls married at 9, and even when they were challenged by activists like ourselves, how come you do this? They come on TV and say, okay, this is the right. Don't you believe in women's rights? This is the right of the little girl to marry at 9 or whenever she wants. So imagine if they are thinking this way, what they were going to do with us next. The way they treated Coptic Christians, and how they were marginalized, and how even when they tried to use them or bring some of them in power, it was an abuse, not use. They were bringing them to beautify their image as a decoration for the regime. Therefore, we decided to stand up. That's why, perhaps, this is what explains why the majority of the people who were in Tahrir Square in June 30th were mostly women, simply because we felt threatened. We felt that our rights are being taken away. Few months after June 30, of course, we had very difficult time after that. And it was very challenging because there were two powers trying to impose themselves on the stage or on the political scene in Egypt. The youth were trying to gain their access again to politics, practicing their rights and so on. But sooner after that, in just 2 months later, we were we have woken up all to the nightmare of the Rab'a strike, or what I would call the so-called Rab'a strike. Because in my opinion, even if it started as a peaceful strike, bringing people, innocent people, by the way, they are poor, coming from all rural areas all over the country, to this place that's called Rab'a and Al-Nahda, and putting them there. Sooner after that, we started to see strange things happening, like hiding weapons, reports of people getting tortured inside the so-called strikes. And by the way, I'm not telling you this as someone who was watching this on TV. My organization at that time was leading a mission to monitor the strikes. So I'm not like Human Rights Watch, who came like 1 year later on and claiming that they are actually making a report on what happened a year ago in a very messy situation, and claiming that they can record this. And even they failed to bring eyewitnesses, to bring people who were there to mention what happened. I'm telling you as someone who was there, monitoring the whole process. For 48 days, the government was trying its best with the people who were in those, or the leaders actually, of the people who were in those so-called strikes, asking them to come out peacefully, or to reach a resolution, to come to an agreement on whatever they want, to see how they can re-include them in the political life once again, especially the youth actually, who later on decided that they will launch a movement calling themselves non-violent young Muslim brotherhood. And they were amazing, by the way. They were young people who just stood up against the leaders, who were inciting violence every day on the stages of Rab'a and Al-Nahda strikes, and claiming that, or actually inciting the people to fight against the other Egyptians, rather than trying to explain their problems or say we want so and so. So what happened after that is that the police simply decided, when it became really dangerous, we have recorded like 48 cases of torture. Only us, a human rights organization who were monitoring the situation. And we had, by the way, we did not have the luxury of accessing the place as much as we wanted. But leaking people in there, we recorded 48 cases of torture. Most of them are recorded through police minutes in police stations, and some of them are recorded through live discussions with the people, and we have them all in videos, and they are all documented in reports that you can go back to on our website. Therefore, and of course there were weapons and other stuff. Therefore, it was a must for the police forces to interfere. And this is according to the human rights conventions and treaties that the UN here respects, including, for example, the treaties that explain how organized forces like police and military should deal with armed strikes or with people who are carrying armies. So they intervened, but before they intervene on that day, the police called human rights organizations and said, we are going to evacuate the strikes. So please come and monitor us. I don't think, if according to what we heard yesterday, that the police killed thousands and thousands in Rab'a, if they were thousands at all, thousands and thousands in Rab'a and so on, they wouldn't have asked us to come and monitor how they are going to evacuate the strikes without committing violations. So we went there, and it was really devastating to see that the first person who was killed in what I would call a war in Rab'a, it's not an evacuation. It was not one side trying to evacuate a peaceful protest on the other side. No, it was a war, and it turned into a war simply because the first person who was killed was a police officer who was carrying the microphone and asking the people to go out through the safe exit. Therefore, and again, I'm not saying this because I watched this on TV. I was there. I was there in Nasr. My house is there, by the way. So I was there with my colleagues, and we monitored this, and we reported this in documents. So how come now they are coming out and claiming that we were killing them? No, until today, since June 30, since we revolted in millions against the abuse of democracy by the Muslim Brotherhood, they are killing Egyptians every day. Okay, let's make a very simple comparison. According to their reports that they depend on, like the Human Rights Watch report, which I know very well, that it's paid for to be issued in this way, it's too biased to believe, actually. The HRW report, the Human Rights Watch report, says that nearly 800 people were killed from the Muslim Brotherhood by organized forces like military and police forces. Well, okay, compare this to 2,984 civilian Egyptians who were killed by the Muslim Brotherhood, who are not an organized force and who do not have the right to carry weapons. Compare this to 2,984 people, Egyptians, civilians, were killed simply because they revolted against the Muslim Brotherhood. They were killed either in churches that they were burned in Minya and Upper Egypt during the evacuation of the Rabaa strikes. They were killed while they were trying to protect the police stations that the Muslim Brotherhood attacked during the evacuation of Rabaa strikes to create a messy situation, as they have always used to do. And they were killed even in clashes that happened simply during the election of President El-Sisi, simply because someone was angry because his neighbor, for example, is hanging the photo of El-Sisi on the door. So they just come together and storm into his house and beat him. Add to this the number of the people who were even killed during the Muslim Brotherhood era itself while they were in power from the religious minorities. And here I remember the case of the Shiite Imam who was badly tortured in the street, and people stormed in his house, and the government did not do anything at that time, the Muslim Brotherhood government, simply because he's a Shiite. And even the leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood were all the time saying that, okay, they don't have equal rights. They are only just a small minority in Egypt. There are only 300 people. Even one person, as long as he carries the identity of an Egyptian, he has the Egyptian nationality, he should have equal rights and equal protection. By the way, the numbers I'm saying, the 2,984, nearly 3,000 people who were killed, it does not include what's happening in Sinai. We have recorded so far through our resources there that 1,085 soldiers were killed there in Sinai. And by the way, this is until July 2014. Add to this the numbers that were killed last week and the week before and the week before. Every week we have new people are being killed from the military by the Muslim Brotherhood and their supporters in Sinai, including, by the way, Hamas, which is labeled as a terrorist organization. Hamas is a branch of the Muslim Brotherhood, and it's labeled as a terrorist organization. So it makes all sense that the Muslim Brotherhood itself would be treated as a terrorist organization. Therefore, we believe that the next step for Egypt to take to guarantee human rights to happen, we have already started on our way. We have the National Council for Human Rights here, which is fighting for human rights and trying to reach to an agreement, and civil society actually, which is working really hard with the government day by day to make sure that rights mentioned in the great constitution that we finally had. By the way, for the first time in our history, we have a constitution that was issued just a few months ago. For the first time in our history, that says women and men are equal and full stop, without any provisions. Nothing is greater. So we have this constitution. So what is stopping us from turning what's happening on paper into the actual words, into the actual world? It's not the divides that the Muslim Brotherhood are claiming, no. It's because actually there is no divide. We had 97% of the population voted recently in the presidential elections, which was unprecedented, and it's fair, and actually the European Union was monitoring, and they said it's fair and free. Is it the government? No. I think the government is very cooperative today, but what is stopping us from turning Egypt from dictatorship into liberal democracy is simply the terrorism practiced by the Muslim Brotherhood. If you believe in human rights, if you believe in liberal democracy, help us to fight terrorism and end the tragedy that is going on in Egypt on a daily basis. Thank you.